Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Seems like we're live. We're really happy to be with you this afternoon. It is Tuesday, and at Coastal Carolina, that means Teal Tuesday. So we're trying our best here. We are in our second week of our Edwards College orientation live discussions. This week, we're talking about a couple of our disciplines in the social sciences. I just want to make it very clear, we are the College of Humanities and Fine Arts. We have a number of social science and actually one science program, one could say, because we are actually running science labs in our anthropology and geography department as well. We're here today to learn more about communications, media, and culture, the major in political science, and our major in intelligence and national security studies. That being said, this is not all the social sciences we have in the college, but we could only fit that much in one session. Next week, we are talking about humanities, where we will also not have all humanities programs represented, but we will give you kind of a good idea on the things we do in our programs here. Just a little, since we are in the social science segment today, on June 18th, the Department of Anthropology and Geography will actually host a live session, and they will talk about experiential learning opportunities, including some of their field school experiences for students. So anyone interested in social sciences, I highly recommend to check in on that as well. But today we'll focus on actually our largest three majors in our college here. And I'm here with the chairs of the Department of Politics and the chair of the Department of Communication, Media, and Culture, and with also a professor in our Intel program. And I thought I'd let them introduce themselves to you and maybe tell you a little bit about how they got where they are now, what their career was, why they decided their discipline, and then we'll take it from there. So maybe we'll start with Dr. Holliday.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kyle Holliday. My degrees are in media and communication. I got interested in studying those because when I was an undergraduate, I took a communication class, and it kind of changed the way that I thought about the world. I hadn't really thought about the way that people successfully communicate with one another, the identities that we form based on the entertainment that we like or the sports that we like. And so because that's such an important part of basic human existence, I wanted to understand that a lot more. My particular area of expertise is in media effects. So like, do violent video games make people violent? And I really like studying mass media and athletics and all kinds of different things because they are such an important part of not only our identities, but also part of the US economy. And so understanding how we relate to those is kind of what I was interested in. And that's how I got into the study of communication and media and culture.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. We get back to you and your big department a little bit later, but let's introduce our two representatives from politics, and maybe we can start with the chair, Dr. Chamberlain.
Hi, I'm Adam Chamberlain. I'm the chair of the Department of Politics at Coastal Carolina University. In this department, we actually have two separate programs. One is focused on political science, and the other is on intelligence and national security studies, which Professor Fitzmakas will talk about in a moment when he introduces himself. I've received my PhD in American politics, specifically political science, with an emphasis on domestic politics. In my research interest, and what really got me kind of into academia itself, was a focus largely on the history and development of American political organizations and public opinion. So for example, right now, some of the work that I'm pursuing, separate from the classroom, my own research, is looking at development of interest groups in American politics, and then studying how that relates to what is going on in the modern United States right now. So I've always had kind of an interest in being a professor. Both my parents were educators, they're both teachers. My grandfather was a school superintendent, my grandmother was a teacher, and my parents told me when I was young, don't teach high school, you don't have the patience for it. So off to school I went, knowing not what I wanted to do. I was a political science major, never thought about law school, and didn't understand exactly what a PhD would entail, but here I am today, 10 years later, here at Coastal Carolina University. I'm looking forward to answering your questions later.
Great, thank you so much. And then we have Professor Fitzanakis, and we'll give him a chance to introduce himself as well.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's nice of you to have us. What I think has become basically a weekly show at this point, right, Dr. Bonholt? It's a weekly recurring event on social media. I am Joseph Fitzanakis, a associate professor in the Intelligence and National Security Studies programs here at Coastal Carolina University. I come originally from the Greek islands. In fact, Crete, the nicest Greek island by far. And I've lived in 4 different countries, been to countless others in my life. I was going to basically become your standard political scientist, doing some of the kinds of things that Adam mentioned. Love politics. We are in the Department of Political Science, and all of us in the intelligence program are political scientists. What changed it from me was 9/11. I remember actually I had to change one of my chapters in my PhD dissertation because of 9/11 before I submitted it. I felt that it was an affront and an assault on not just the United States, but every person in the world that wants to live in a secure and safe society. And that drove me more into the still politics, the politics of government, especially how do we make sure that our governments remain secure while at the same time remaining free. I specialize in one particular discipline of intelligence, and that is intelligence collection. How do we collect the intelligence we need to make society safer while doing it in a way that is still legal and democratic? It's what most people would call spying, but the technical term is intelligence collection in our field. I have an expertise in several different intelligence agencies, mostly the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency, which is our largest intelligence agency. It's bigger than the FBI and the CIA combined, and yet much less known around the world. I've written about all kinds of different topics, including, of course, CIA, NSA, but also North Korean intelligence agencies, Saudi Arabian intelligence agencies, if you can believe it, Sudanese intelligence agencies. And currently I'm working on a book that's coming out next year on the topic of wiretapping, or as we call it, intelligence, interception of communications. And I'm working on a chapter right now with some of our students, in fact, that's been accepted and should be published soon on to what extent the intelligence community did its job right in notifying the policymakers on COVID-19.
Great. Thank you. Also, you just created this lovely segue back to communication, media, and culture. Because look at that, it's all connected, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's wonderful. So now we know a lot more about the 3 of you. And I think maybe we start with Dr. Holliday, and you could tell us a little bit about the different areas in the department, because there are many different options and concentrations for students interested in your department. So just give a little rundown of your programs, maybe. That would be
Thank you. I first wanted to thank Dr. Fitzanakis for sort of help clarifying communications and communication are different. What Dr. Fitzanakis has studied is the communications. That's sort of the more technological, like wiretapping, as you described it, or people work with high-speed internet or telephone lines in a variety of ways. And so that's a different expertise that somebody would get in communications compared to communication. But as Dean Bornholt just said, we actually have 5 different concentrations in our undergraduate degree. So everybody graduates with their major in communication, and we have about 6 classes that you take along with every other student in communication. They're kind of the intro classes, and then you end with a capstone at the end. And you'd be in those classes with people from a variety of different areas in our major. But like I said, we have 5 concentrations. One is communication studies. That's sort of the historical study of group communication and interpersonal communication. That's also a little bit more open than some of the other concentrations, so you could pick and choose a variety of different classes. We also have interactive journalism, and if you studied that with us, you would either learn how to become a broadcast journalist or a multimedia journalist. You might learn how to write for blogs, or write for websites, or write for newspapers, or write for a variety of different media like that. We also have health communication, which would be very helpful right now in this pandemic, unfortunately, of basically spreading information from communication perspective about health-related items in the news or things that people don't quite know enough about, and they have the information, but they're not quite understanding it. So we use communication successfully to get people to understand and follow through with things. We also have sports communication, which is the study of not only the impact that sport has on US culture and our individual identities, but also we have classes where you can learn to become a sports broadcaster or work behind the scenes in sports media. And then finally, we also have public relations and integrated communication, which includes a variety of different things. The primary focus is public relations. Basically, you would work with for-profit or non-profit or non-governmental organizations to help successfully share a message on behalf of that organization. So you could do that from advocacy perspective to help people in need. Or you could work in some of the places that you would not work in the same areas as people with political degrees, but you could work with those people. We don't have this degree in our program, but I've done work in political communication, which is a little bit different than what Dr. Chambers described, Dr. Chamberlain described, but he and I are somewhat similar in the way that we approach our research, which is pretty neat. We also have a master's degree, but I'll leave it at the undergraduate for now.
Great. There was a lot of information. That was really 5 different degrees you just explained, which is great. Yeah. So, good. I'm going to pass this back over to Dr. Chamberlain. Can you share a little bit of the political science options we have as well?
Sure. So within the Department of Politics, and specifically the political science portion of the department, we have 2 tracks within this. The first is what we call the domestic politics track, and the second is the global politics track. And I'll talk about how those are a little bit different in a minute. All students in political science that take a core set of courses that are foundational to the political science major, about research in the area, the basics of American government and public policy, the basics of global politics. They take an additional course, some of them in stats, but not always. It's not required. Encouraged, but it's not required. And then once through the foundations, you'll take courses in the 4 main subfields of political science, namely American politics, focused on the United States, political theory, comparative politics, and international relations. While American politics you're familiar with, political theory deals with philosophy and theories about how governments should be in politics and society should be set up. That tends to be more humanistic and more humanities based than some of the other areas, but is still essential to the political science discipline. Comparative politics looks to compare other nations, looking at how legislatures or parliaments in different countries behave relative to one another. While as international relations focuses a lot on nations and how nation states interact with one another. So we provide all of that. If you're on the domestic track, when you get into your upper level classes that are not required, you'll take 5 classes that are American politics and 2 that are global. If you're global track, you take 5 that are global and 2 that are domestic. We'd have a few courses that sometimes can count either way, like some of the political theory classes, but generally you get a broad range education in political science, regardless of whichever track you take. So we often have students take domestic politics tracks that once they're done end up looking to do something that's global, or students that start on the global politics track moving into local government or going to law school. It just makes a difference for what interests you at the time. From these, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more later, a wide variety of opportunities are opened up once you graduate with this degree. And we have alumni in a whole range of different careers. It's a diverse degree that you can apply in many different ways. And as I noted, we'll go over that a bit later. And within the department, we also have the Intelligence and National Security Studies degree, which doesn't have a particular field or particular track, but I'll allow Professor Fitzmaurice to talk a little bit more about how the professors there work with the students to figure out the variety of careers in the intelligence community.
Right. Thanks for that, Dr. Chamberlain. You're right. We don't have official specializations. But I think the best way to approach that question that the dean asked is by looking at the types of students that we have and the kinds of areas that they seem to tend to kind of lean toward, as it were. And I would separate them into essentially 5 different categories. First, we have people who love the analysis side of intelligence versus the collection side of intelligence. So I mentioned before that I particularly work on the collection side, people who tend to be outside doing the kind of hands-on stuff, whether it's human intelligence, basically sending out a living, breathing person to collect information on a target, or cyber, something that happens remotely, focusing on either organized crime, counterterrorism, state adversaries. Then you have people who prefer to be the ones to receive the information and actually make sense of it, collect it, collate it, read between the lines, connect the dots, and then pass on information of high value to policy or decision makers. These are the analysts. So you got this kind of dichotomy between people who work outside, people who work inside, basically. Then you have the military versus civilian distinction. I mentioned before 2 agencies that I work on, the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency. They have the same mission, protect America, but they actually are, one is civilian, one is military. That's kind of interesting. They have different sort of chains of command and different cultures in many ways. So we have students who want to go into the military field versus those who want to go in the civilian field. Then you have people who want to work domestically or abroad. It's kind of interesting. Dr. Chamberlain talked about the domestic politics versus international politics. And we have the same distinction in Intel, actually. People who want to spend their lives looking at foreign targets, foreign issues, foreign concerns, versus those who want to work inside the United States. Homeland security is one example of this. Emergency management, communications, etc. And many agencies, say if you work for the CIA, be sure you're going to spend most of your life working abroad. And you and your family will probably hardly ever come back to the United States for a long period of time. Other agencies like the FBI work mostly inside the United States, or the, for instance, the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. And then you have another sort of dichotomy between students who want to work in law enforcement versus strictly intelligence. So agencies that have the power to arrest, like Secret Service, like as I mentioned before, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the ATF, the FBI. These are all federal, but in law enforcement agencies. They have intelligence components, but again, the culture is more on the law enforcement side versus those like the CIA or like the Defense Intelligence Agency, like the National Security Agency, they have no interest in arresting anybody. They want to just collect information and make sense of it. So if you look at our students, and we have, as the dean mentioned earlier, hundreds of them, I would classify them in those categories. And these are the trends that we see in our program, and we cover all of those.
That's great. I think, thank you, Dr. Vitsanakis. You also already outlined very well where your students go post-graduation, the different agencies and the different options, depending on the different interests they have and focus they had. So that's really great. I think I'm going to ask Dr. Chamberlain a little bit about placement of students. Where do the political science majors end up post-graduation from Coastal Carolina?
Sure, that's a very good question. So I think that isolating, kind of like Joseph faced, there's not one particular location where all students end up. A good portion, maybe not the majority, but oftentimes the majority of students are in political science because they do want to pursue a career in law down the road. And so within the department, we do have a pre-law minor that many students take in conjunction with political science, though we do get students from outside the major as well taking that. So we do have a good number of students who are graduating from law schools and getting jobs in the legal community. For example, there was one student who graduated a few years ago. He went to The Ohio State University for his law degree and is coming back and applying for the North Carolina bar. We recently had a student go off to University of Michigan, another to University of Iowa, another to the University of Tennessee, and that's just a small selection. There are many more. So a lot of students do end up going down the legal route and entering in law schools. But we also want to give students a broader understanding and tell them, well, you don't have to go into law with a degree in political science. We have a number of students who have entered into government in some level, whether they're working at local government, oftentimes after going and getting a master's of public administration degree or a master's of public policy. We do have some that have gone up to DC and are working with, after a degree oftentimes, working in consulting groups or working for members of Congress. But some of the people go to DC straight out of undergraduate, enter into a member of Congress's office and use that as a way to find opportunities down the road. In the internship program that we have here that puts people in DC is an easy pathway into those types of careers for students who are interested. On the global side, we've also worked with putting people overseas and doing stuff. We've had a number of students who work for nonprofits in a global setting. Some of them are back in the US now, working here instead of being abroad, but they do go and travel back and forth. And so we have a variety of students who end up doing those types of careers. We even have the ones who decide to go on to be teachers or go into the military after they have the experience here. It really is a wide variety of opportunities. And I would finally note that our department on the political science side has been especially good at putting people in master's and especially PhD programs in political science in recent years. We have students right now at top PhD programs. One who is a dual poli-sci and Intel student is at the University of Chicago. We have students at the University of Minnesota, both PhD and law school, University of Georgia, University of Iowa, who recently got a job as a professor at another school. He's doing quite well. So we try to give students all the opportunities they need to find the kind of career paths they want to take.
That's great. That's great news. I'm going to pass this on to Dr. Holliday, who will, with his many students, is also a difficult question to answer. I can tell you from your own experience, it seems like we're placing a lot of graduates from your programs into all our local news outlets here. So, but,
yeah, the people who teach in our interactive journalism concentration, all of them are former or somewhat still practicing journalists, including broadcast journalists, anchors on television news, producers on television news, including award-winning producers in television news. And we have a very high success rate, as Dean Bornhold just said, of placing our broadcast journalists into broadcast positions, both here in Horry County in South Carolina, but also across the nation. If you walk around the hallways in Britton Hall in our side, once we can get back there, if you walk around there, you can see that a lot of our alumni that we focus on in posters around the hall are broadcast journalists or journalism producers, for example. So we definitely have a high, very clear success rate in our journalism program, but we also have a high success rate in our other areas as well. Just like in politics and just like in national security or intelligence and national security, there are a variety of jobs that our alumni can get. We have people who work for Amazon, people who work for Disney, both at kind of the park level and the communication that they do there and also higher in the organization. We have an alumni who works for Blue Sky Studios, which makes the Ice Age movies and a few other very famous movies. She was actually a double major with English. One of our other students is somebody who was also a double major in politics. And so the fact that our students can double major and still be very successful, or the fact that they focus in just journalism or just one of our other areas, shows the wide variety of options that they have. So we're very successful at placing students in local media or local organizations, but we also are successful at doing that at the national level. We have several students, as Dr. Chamberlain mentioned, who go on to get graduate degrees. Some are currently in their master's programs. We send several to my alma mater in Virginia Tech. They've all been very successful. And we also have people who work for national sporting teams working on the communication side of those. So professional athletic teams, such as the baseball team in Cleveland, the local baseball team here in Myrtle Beach. We have a lot of people who work for them, a wide variety of different options. And we tend to have really good success rate with people getting those jobs immediately after graduation.
That's great. While I have you, and you talked about graduate school, talk about your own graduate program. Now is the time.
Yeah, so we have a master's degree as well. So several of our students from across the Edwards College have pursued a graduate degree after graduation, including with us or in the other programs around our college. Ours is in communication, and it also has two concentrations. One is called communication leadership, and that's built in part for people who may want to start off their career or who may already be in their career, but are looking for a more managerial role. So it's from a communication perspective, but it's basically how to best communicate with people that you would be the manager for, or you would be the supervisor for. So in basically encouraging their success while also ensuring the success of the organization that you work for. Our other concentration, besides communication leadership, is called communication advocacy. And that's basically where you would advocate through communication activism on behalf of another group. So that happens to be really important in the news right now. The organizations that we're hearing about in the news are organized in part because of one, the desire to advocate for other people, but two, through the communication, the successful organizational communication, through media, through working with the news media. All of these things are elements of our master's degree where you can learn how to best represent somebody else and encourage their success. Or in communication leadership, encourage the success of everybody who's involved in the organization that you happen to be a leader in.
That's great. Thank you so much. We're learning a lot. Since the program we're doing this month is mainly focusing on the incoming students, the freshmen, the transfer students who are coming in this fall, I think this is also a good opportunity to talk about all the extra, the outside the classroom activities that we offer. And I have to say that it's my first year in the college, and I'm amazed at all the experiential learning opportunities our students have, the pre-professional opportunities, the student clubs, organizations, all of these aspects. So I think it would be great to talk a little bit about what our students interested in your programs can do to be active outside class and in addition to class. So maybe we start with Intel this round. So with Dr. Fitzanakis.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bonhold. I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because often the questions that we get as professors in the program from incoming students or sometimes from their parents are things like, how successful will I be in placing a job after this program? And the answer is always, well, that depends a lot on how active you are while you are in the program and how often you're going to take advantage of the opportunities that you're going to have here to enrich your resume and your CV with information that others will not have who apply for the same positions that you will. These are competitive jobs. And so when you apply, for example, in the Central Intelligence Agency, where, by the way, it is 18 times easier to get into Harvard as an undergraduate than actually be hired by the Central Intelligence Agency, you better have a very good resume and a good CV. And we have prepared you here in Coastal for that opportunity to be able to say, yes, I have what you're looking for, because I didn't just come to classes and then go home and forget about what I learned, but I practiced it, I lived and breathed this stuff when I was at Coastal. For instance, we have an organization which is supervised by my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Smith, called CLEAR, Coastal Law Enforcement Analysis and Research. And what that group does, these are our students who are cleared by the local law enforcement agencies here in this area, who then conduct intelligence research on their behalf. One project that they did recently involved bank robberies. The law enforcement agencies wanted to know, when we do have bank robberies in the area, where do they happen? What time of year? Is there a connection between the on tourist season or off tourist season, in order to be able to preempt it, predict it, and then act before the crime happens? And it was a very long project that the students then presented to the entire law enforcement agency here in Myrtle Beach. We also have the Chanticleer Intelligence Brief, the CIB. Essentially what this is, it is a simulated mock intelligence agency, which complete with a leadership structure, regional concentrations, heads of desk, etc., that models itself after the Central Intelligence Agency. The CIB, among other activities, publishes a biannual journal which our students publish their best work, their best analysis work. I will tell you that there's nothing better for you when you go for an interview where they ask you for a sample of your writing and say, well, it's actually published, and here's a copy of the journal. You can keep that. You know, that tends to dominate the interview in so many ways. In fact, you can find out more about the CIB at www.cibrief.org. Also, we have WINS, Women in Intelligence and National Security, an organization that is basically the first in the nation, by the way. We're very proud of that. And their goal is to basically promote the ideas of inclusion and diversity in the intelligence community. It is a traditionally male-dominated field, and people are trying to change that. And Coastal is currently at the forefront of this. We have, for the first time in history, a woman leading the CIA, Gina Haspel, who I am told is aware and supportive of WINS. On top of that, WINS has organized so far 2 conferences at CCU with over 40 speakers from pretty much every intelligence agency out there, including the FBI, the CIA, NSA, DEA, and so on and so forth. We also do the Washington semester, where we take students for a month in DC, and they visit all kinds of intelligence agencies who are taking courses there. They visit the CIA more recently, and many of them come back with job offers because of that. We do a study abroad. We go to Cyprus on a regular basis in the summer, where we go basically as close as we can to the action, which is Syria. We're practically 40 miles from Syria, but yet in the European Union soil, studying the security situation in the Middle East. It's an amazing program that I've done twice, and it's one of my favorite memories at Coastal. Basically, I will say this: there is no program in this country that has more hardwired extracurricular opportunities into its curriculum than our program.
Great. Wonderful. Yes, wonderful opportunities, in fact. So as I said, I was impressed, and you're not the only ones in Intel. I know political science equally has many opportunities for our students. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll try to break the opportunities down into first talking a little bit about internships and then moving into what we have for the extracurriculars that are not internships. So within political science, we work with a program in Washington, D.C., the Washington Internship Institute. And both political science, Intel students, even comp students, it's open to anyone, can take this opportunity to go and work through this program, take some classes in D.C., but also intern, and they work with the program to figure out where they would like to be. If they want to be in a congressional office, if they want to be working for a nonprofit. And many students take advantage of WII because it is cost competitive. Meaning, in fact, for out-of-state students, I believe it is actually cheaper to do that program now than it is to attend Coastal on campus. So it's actually a great way. Yes, it's a great way to use money. Great way to get experience and to use your money and make it go the extra mile. We also, though, have locally a number of types of internships. So I mentioned that there's a lot of interest in the legal field. Numbers of local law offices work with us, and students routinely will go and intern there, sometimes for credit, sometimes for money, sometimes just for the experience. It varies depending on the student's needs and what the law office would like, but we have long-standing relationships with those and are more than happy to help and put students in those positions. Additionally, there are opportunities locally with local congressional offices. While we don't give credit for campaigns, we do give credit for working in political offices. And so we do have students who intern at local congressional offices, local state offices, when those come up. So a lot of students are building up internship experiences in those capacities. But we offer a lot more outside the classroom than just the internships. We offer a lot of these experiential learning opportunities. When it comes to the domestic side, one of the centerpieces is what we call the South Carolina Student Legislature. The state of South Carolina has for a long time had a mock state legislative experience, and the Coastal Carolina delegation, as we call it, has been active for the last 15 years or so, and we always have a good number of students participate in that. And in the fall, we go up to Columbia, South Carolina, and actually take over the state legislature. And the simulation happens there in the legislative and Senate chambers. And it's a great experience for our students, and we have people that routinely take it throughout their time here. We vary this, but we do offer Model UN and Model European Union. Similar to that, they're mock United Nations and mock European Union simulations. The mock EU is especially important because when we do model EU, every other year it's actually at the EU. We just had some students over there before, and then it varies, I think, the location the other year. So students get to go abroad, get to have a real simulation experience where it actually takes place. In the past, we've also done mock trial and moot court, and depending on student interest, we try to get those up and going as well for those who are interested in some of the law aspects of the experiential learning. But I think important, and this is political and it's also an intel, we have a lot of professors, and Joseph already kind of alluded to this, that work with students on research, whether it's presenting on campus at undergraduate research presentations on their own, or whether it's working directly with professors on scholarly works to get published in academic journals or in other venues. We have a very strong commitment to that undergraduate research, whether it's in political theory, working with Professor Kim Hale, whether it's working with the Intel faculty. And I think, Joseph, you've published with students, and at least 2 other members of the department I can think of on the Intel side have done that. And we continue to do so as well here. We really believe that students learning to critically think, engage, and learning the research methods that are appropriate to these fields gives you an added advantage. As Joseph said, when you apply to jobs, to have a great writing sample and to have the skills that show that you can do a project on your own or with, in collaboration with a professor, is excellent. And so we work with students extensively on that, which is probably why we do so well at getting students enrolled in graduate programs. They can walk in there showing an interest, knowing what to expect in an MA or a PhD program, and then they can come out successful, which is important. We don't just send students who then fail out or don't complete their degrees. They complete the masters and PhDs when they go there. And that's not the case with a lot of other schools where students aren't prepared and subsequently fail out. So we offer a lot of these all outside the classroom experience, not to mention additional speaker series. We have a reading group on the American Constitution and Founding Fathers. So we have a number of professors doing a number of these different situations. And that's not even talking about the study abroad trips and the additional programs. Through Professor Adu and Professor D, we have programs that go overseas to the Republic of Georgia. We've gone to Ghana and the International Student Festival in Norway. So we have a lot of opportunities for students to engage with domestically and globally. And we really find that it adds a lot of life to the department and it adds a lot to the student experience.
That's great. I need to confess, I just moved down here from Washington, D.C., and I came from a university with a large politics program. And we think these opportunities cannot exist down here in South Carolina that, you know, in D.C. they're given, right? Students, I mean, I was 3 stops from Capitol Hill, so our students obviously did internships and all this, but our students here do the same, which is that's so amazing. I think that is really remarkable, having all these opportunities for the students, for the, you know, professional preparedness for graduate school and for the job market. So that's another one of those surprises for me, being completely prejudiced, coming from the Capitol, thinking it's wonderful. So I think that's really remarkable about the programs. And the same you will hear now from communication, media, and culture. A never-ending amount of opportunities for the students. So give us a few examples, please, if you would.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I want to repeat what Dr. Fitsunaka said before, that having practical experience on your resume at graduation really puts you a leg up above other people who are applying for the same job. So you can be very successful in your class and demonstrate that you understand how to create something, or as Dr. Chamberlain was just referring to, how to conduct research. If you're going into a graduate program, either at the master's or PhD level, they're probably going to ask you to conduct research. So starting that early, and that's required in our program just as it is in the political science program, starting that early and understanding how to conduct that is going to be really helpful for people. So just like both Dr. Fitsunakis and Dr. Chamberlain said, we tend to publish research with our undergraduate students, which is really not that common. It's one of the things that is most exciting about Coastal to me, is how much we encourage that. encourage undergraduate research. I actually have 3 different research studies that are out for review in an academic journal that I co-wrote with my undergraduate students. So I'm really happy about that. It's a really wonderful opportunity for them, and it was also really great helping them understand all the different steps that are involved with that. So I know a large number, or a significant number of our faculty in my department also help students present their own work at professional conferences. When you're conducting research, the 2 best ways, at least in our field, to get the research known by other people is either to present it at a conference or to publish it in a journal. There are other ways as well. But several of our undergraduate students present at undergraduate or professional level conferences, showing off what they've accomplished as students. But some of the specific ways that our students get that practical experience is by working in our television production studio, which is run across the entire Edwards College, but a lot of our students and a lot of our classes take place in that studio. As I said, we have several people who've worked in broadcast journalism. They've worked on TV news, and so they show you how to be on camera, how to run the equipment, how to be in the production studio to do that. We also have a radio station called WCCU Radio, and that is just like any other radio station. There are rules and certain shows that we offer that are for news or for sports or for showing off new music that the student volunteers, or even the paid positions that we have in the radio station, that they can show off who they are, or they can get started working on a radio career. We've had several people who have gotten jobs at radio stations because they either worked at or actually ran our radio station. And that's a really important element of pretty much every single publication that we have here at Coastal. Or every media option, like the television studio or the Chanticleer newspaper. We have several magazines that our college produces. We have the Athenaeum Press, which creates really amazing forms of journalism and art and history and all kinds of different things. Is that almost all of these are advised by faculty, but run by students. So the people who write for the newspaper or edit the newspaper, they're in charge of it. They may ask the professional staff advisor for help or guidance, but it's really their responsibility, which means that they are already working at a professional newspaper. They're already working at an actual radio station. Our students who work for Teal Nation, which is our student-run public relations firm, which there are not a lot of those in the country or even the world, and ours was actually started by a professor who literally wrote the book on how to do it. So we're very proud of that. It's called Teal Nation Communication, and it's a real public relations firm. So the students in that class have real clients that they are actually working on their PR and marketing and advertising campaigns. And those get put out into the world. It's not just a project in class that you get a grade for, although that can be very important and meaningful. It's also putting that work out into the world to show off how successful that our students have been or can be. So we have all of these different media options. We also have internships across the Horry County, across South Carolina, across the Southeast. We've had several students who work with the Disney World internship program and loved it and have continued to work for Disney. One of our students actually graduated and then got through her internship that she had successfully completed. She became a casting director on the Netflix show House of Cards, which our alumni from the Edwards College, Michael Kelly, was one of the stars of. That was actually a complete coincidence. They didn't know each other. He didn't get her the job. She got the job on her own because of the experience that she had created for herself through internships and through seeking out the different opportunities that we've all been talking about, and because of what she's learned in our program. There was one more that I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was. So hopefully I'll think of it later.
Great. Thank you. That's so much information, which is wonderful. Obviously, for everyone watching this later as well, the websites are full of this information. I just wanna mention the Edgar Dyer Institute for Leadership and Public Policy, which is closely affiliated with the politics department, but it's really an interdisciplinary, it's really an institute that sits outside the department. And I want to just, because we want to wrap it up in a few minutes, but I want to just mention a few things that you will not find on any website because they're so new, a few new developments. So, which some of them are just now in the approval stages, but starting this fall, we will have a new minor in film and production studies, which is of great interest to students in Dr. Holliday's program, obviously, but not only, because this is really one of these programs where students came to us and said that's something they would like to see. We have this wonderful production studio, of course. We have this great program in digital culture and design. We have like so many, the English students were really interested in it. So that's very much an interdisciplinary program. We're working on a program in social media that is in the drafting stages. We have almost approved a number of regional interdisciplinary programs that will feed very strongly into the global emphasis for political science and also for the Intel program. So programs in, and we'll forget half of them, but Asian studies, European studies, Middle Eastern studies, African and African diaspora studies, Latin American and Caribbean and US Latino studies, forgot the exact name. We have a Russian and Eurasian studies program. So lots of these regional programs that are working closely with the program in languages and intercultural studies. So it's really a combination of, again, very interdisciplinary. Students will take courses in politics, history, communication, media, culture, languages, English, you name it. So we're working on a lot of these initiatives in the college, which is great because as you heard, just listening to the discussion, it's clear there are no clear markers and boundaries really. This is very, very fluid and then a lot of overlap, which makes sense. The world is not neatly compartmentalized either. So things and questions are complex. So I'm sure I forgot things. So I'm gonna just open this to you if there's anything else that you think we want to mention to our viewers. Anything we forgot? Go ahead, Dr. Fitzen.
I would like to mention something regarding the mission of our program. It is obviously an academic program. Our main purpose is to explain to students how this whole thing we call intelligence plays into government and how to make the country more stable and secure. But it is not just an academic program. We also want to do our part to make sure things like 9/11 never happen again. And obviously, what we're seeing now with the COVID-19 pandemic is that, unfortunately, as the world becomes more unstable, our students, our alumni are very much in demand. And it is a source of personal pride for me to see our students, our former students, enter the intelligence community. We have students that have briefed the White House. In fact, I try to convince one of them to finish their brief with a chance up. She said she couldn't do it. But I tried. Also, we had, I can remember a year ago when one of our former students described to me the feeling he had walking into his first day of the job at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., at the Hoover building, not the prettiest looking building in D.C., but a very important building for the U.S. government. And it's those kinds of things that really drive our program. And we can't wait to have whoever is watching you do the same thing, enter our program, leave here equipped with all the information you need to really make a difference in the world and go out there and complete the mission.
I would like to follow with that. That's something that obviously is incredibly important, and the students in the programs and the Department of Politics are really sincerely well prepared by the time they graduate and have already begun those kinds of experiences even before graduation. We also study things like the pandemic from a communication perspective. So in national security, they may study exactly how something is spreading or when did it come, or analyze that kind of data among many other things as well. From a communication perspective, you all probably know, the people listening at home or people on this call, probably know people who don't understand the information about the pandemic and are getting it wrong, or doing incorrect things in their personal lives because they're not understanding or they're not paying attention anymore. And so from a communication and media perspective, we tried to basically make that change in the world for the audience or for the public. So we take the information that scientists are sharing, or that medical professionals are sharing, or that people in the government are sharing, and we try to create new campaigns or new communication strategies based on what we know has worked in the past, but applying it to new situations like what's going on in the world, to make a difference in that way, make a difference for the people who maybe understand this is important, what's happening to us, but they don't understand exactly how it's important or what they should be doing. The information is out there, but that doesn't mean people understand it or know where to find it, or know how to apply it for themselves. And so communication can help with that. We also create careers for our students that help in a more personal level. So several of our students have graduated and worked at local organizations in party and event planning, which is different than working on something like the pandemic. But when you're helping somebody planning an event like a marriage, or planning a campaign, or like a fundraising event, you can make a really significant difference either in that person's direct life or through advocacy for others. You can make a difference in a wide variety of people, even in just one event that you've planned. So what I'm really excited about working with both of these gentlemen and the people who work across all of our departments and majors is how much our students can make a significant difference while they're at Coastal, and definitely after they graduate from either of our programs.
I just like to add, I think, kind of building off Kyle, who built off Joseph, that, I think right now, the state of the world as it is, political science clearly has a relevance that those of you watching understand and are interested in, and or might be interested in. And our department really has, kind of building off of both of these two sides, we have a focus on trying to make you better consumers of understanding the trends, understanding patterns of behavior across time currently, to understand and reflect on what all this means, to try to come out with solutions, try to understand what are the best ways to achieve things that we need to do as a society. And that involves thinking about political theory and the ideals of what a democracy should be. It involves comparative politics and seeing what other countries do to understand how your nation or another nation might be able to improve in some area. And we're in a global world, so international politics matters in those ways as well. And naturally, domestic or American politics makes a difference in the variety of different things we study there, from legislatures to public opinion to voting to public policy. It all intertwines. And I think that that's really what we appreciate as a political science department, is when we see students who either come back, or you get that email a few years later from someone who suddenly something dawned on them in class that they had years ago. And they realized that once they started to work in a particular career and do something, they realized that what they had learned in your classroom was paying off. There was a value to what was taught. That time a professor said, well, this paper's okay, but it needs this, and gave them a C+ and told them to revise. They say, you know what, I learned from that moment. And I realized these are the things I needed to do, and I'm better because of it. And while it doesn't always happen a lot, all of the professors, I think, in our department have had those moments and have those emails or have those phone calls or have those conversations. And it's that which reflects on the fact that what we're doing might seem academic, as Joseph said, and is academic, but it has a greater purpose as well. And so I hope that people come here ready to learn and excited for getting into the classroom, whether in communications, media and culture, whether in the Intel program, or whether they're going to study domestic or global politics.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. So I want to encourage everyone who catches this, sees this, finds this on Facebook or YouTube. If you have questions, contact any one of us, obviously. There's going to be more orientation sessions happening. Next week, it will be featuring the humanities, the week after the arts. And then we have one more that will talk about our interdisciplinary programs, where everybody will come back basically, and all of the programs feature back into that. So we're here to answer questions. Our advisors in the college are obviously here to answer questions. I just want to encourage everyone to really pursue the opportunities here. As you heard, double majoring, adding minors, the new minors we created, existing minors, certificates, be active in the extracurricular activities. We always, during our orientation sessions in the dean's office, we usually just tell the students, just ask us and we make it happen. So tell us what you need, what you're interested in, and we'll find answers and hopefully programs and solutions. So that's really part of the flexibility we have in our college, which is wonderful, because we are a college covering many different areas, from very pre-professional programs to highly theoretical programs, to going really to the arts, right? You learn how to play the trumpet in our college just as much as you learn how to give an intelligence briefing. So the variety of options is really wonderful, and we encourage students to try it out and really expose themselves to it. So thank you everyone for spending time with us. Thank you for being here with us with all the information. I learned a lot today again too, which is always good. And as I said, anyone watching it, you can type questions, you can email us, be in touch. I also want to thank Travis Brooks, who organized the live stream for us from the Dean's office. Thanks for that. And I see everyone again next week, hopefully. So stay safe and